going to jump into the topic today with a show of hands from the audience with a couple of questions. How many of you here today in your life have felt either like a fraud, feel like you can't speak your truth, or feel like you didn't or don't belong here on the planet? How many can I see altogether? So it looks like there's about 100% of people in this room that have felt that way. So I'm going to be upfront today. You may not like me by the end of this, because what I'm going to say is going to sound terrible or terribly terrific. We were born in a really interesting cultural era, sandwiched between the industrial age and the information age, which affects our healthcare system in a very unique way. It has us approach it very mechanically, as if we are items on a conveyor belt with broken parts. And many of you in the audience are really fed up with going to healthcare providers when nothing works or lasts. Or you're a healthcare provider yourself, and you're tired of people coming to you to be cured or fixed when you know they're not broken. So what I'm telling you today and inviting you into knowing is that we're moving into a spiritual age where you are no longer going to feel like you need to fit in like a cog in a system, but you will embody the fact that you're not a limited being made up of the sum of your parts, where you have the choice of your own free will to leave the life you're living and move to the one that's in alignment with your soul, where you will no longer feel satisfied with a mediocre body with random symptoms or injuries, a platonic or toxic relationship, or a half-assed career. Now, this isn't going to feel comfortable, because what that means is that you will have to become part of the minority that no longer feel like a fraud or belong to those that do. What that means then is that your mission has to become stronger than your fear or your desire for comfort, but that you will find a new level of comfort that comes from living your life authentically. So what I'm going to teach you today, by the end of today, you're going to know how to speak directly to your soul so that you can envision your authentic life and know why the mental, emotional, and spiritual symptoms are showing up in your life today. Does that sound like a good plan? You're interested in knowing? Yeah? Okay. Before I go into that, I'm going to tell you a little story about me so that you know how it is that I've come to know this stuff. So when from the age of about 14 to my early 20s, I lived in a neighborhood that looks like this. It was full of acreages, fancy cars, and indoor pools, and all of those things. Christmases, we had tons of wrapped presents, and my stockings were always full and overflowing, and my mom really put a lot of effort into it. But I had this distinct feeling all my life that something really important was missing. And at the age of 16, this is where I lived. This is a Google map. So my house is in the middle, and we had a neighbor who lived off to the right of us. And he was a lucrative plastic surgeon. So one day we trekked across the grass there to have conversation on his balcony. And this is me when I was 16. He had a good assessment of how I looked, and he informed me that he could fix the dimple on my nose. I'll give you a close-up. Do you see it? See the flaw there that should be surgically helped? Do you see it? No? Well, neither did I. So I was actually quite disgusted by his suggestion. And the awkward silence that followed, and the weird feeling that he had this desperate need for approval set in. What happened the next day was shocking, but not surprising. Because I felt his desperation, his suicide made sense to me. And I couldn't have explained it when I was 16 years old, but the energetic impression of his desperate last days were stamped into my being. I can still feel it. I knew it, and I felt it in my body. Now, a lot of us have these energetic stamps. We call them trauma these days. It reminds me of a quote from Bob Marley. He says that some people are so poor, all they have is money. And this reality, this rich culture was my reality until I lived and moved and worked in India in 1995. So there's me with my little bowl cut and my Indian family. They were, that's gonna make me cry too. They were unbelievably poor and outrageously generous. They gave up their only double bed for me. And while I was in India, I witnessed families, parents that would break their children's legs so that they could make more money begging.
These injustices,
they ate away at me like termites in a well-constructed home. No one could see it, but it was happening. So on the 24-hour flight home from India back to Canada, my chronic lifelong eczema flared up. I remember it was so itchy. I was scratching this, I can still remember, this elbow fold vigorously. It was so itchy. And I scratched it so much to the point of bleeding. And within a day or two, a streptococcal boil the size of a golf ball erupted. Eventually, I was led to the infectious disease specialist who